Well, I'm sitting in a water race somewhere up the side of a hill way in the back of Macetown. And actually I'm on another piece of Te Araroa. This is the Big Hill track, and I can see Big Hill, but I've yet to sort of get up there. But I've met some nice people on my climb so far up from Macetown, Bush Creek, and then up a side track, and they've all turned off onto Sawpit Gully. They're going down there, and I'm detouring on up and over into Macetown. It's been a grey start for the day, but the sun's come out. It's sort of patchy cloud. It looks like it's going to get warmer, and so it's a great day for hiking. Looking forward to the rest of my day's hike into Macetown. Well, I've just spotted something exciting through the trees there. Looks like rusty old equipment. Huzzah! Well, caramba! This is so cool. This is wonderful. This is a Pelton's patent wheel, so a Pelton wheel for generating power for driving stampers and badans. Look at it. So the Pelton wheel provided the power, the water energy spun this wheel round and round and round. Great long belt would have gone up to that pulley and driven the horizontal shaft. The horizontal shaft is geared down, and it's got a clutch in there too, by Jove, so they can go backwards or disengage it or something. And it drives the big wheel. The big wheel drives the horizontal shaft up here. Look at it, isn't it wonderful? And rotates those cams, those big curly things. As the cams rotate, they lift. Now none of those are being lifted because they're all offset. Probably, yep. But those collets on those vertical collars would have been lifted up. That whole rod would have lifted up. As it lifted up down the bottom here was the head, and you can see that it had a removable stamp on the bottom, and when that wore down they could take it off, put on a new one, and they could take it off by there'd be pins through those slots. You need lots of water as well to keep lighter rock flowing out over the tables. But what I know about stampers is that you have to erect them perfectly vertically, because if you don't erect them perfectly vertically, then in a very short order the stamper will throw itself to pieces. So they are great pieces of engineering. Now down here in the grass is a whole lot of old stamp heads, or stamper rods, or whatever, with the stamp heads. So let's see what we can figure out about these. Start with this one here. This has lost a bit of its little collet at the top, so it's obviously being used. Just have a look at the shaft. The shaft is in pretty good order, which is interesting. Same with all these other shafts. What I'm looking for is a narrowing of the shaft where they would wear, and I can't really see any evidence of that. So that means this must have been a very well balanced stamper, but you know, pretty well used, because look at the size of that. That's the stamp head, and it's only 50mm thick, and we saw them over there 300mm long, so that's what wore off them. How have I done? They've called the vertical thing stamper rods, the horizontal thing cams and camshafts, the bottom big box, the mortar box and screen, and the bottom things were the stamper shoes. And then they've called the wooden thing the blanket table, and this gentleman here is putting a blanket on the blanket table, so obviously he's collecting stuff. And he's got efficient Pelton wheels revolved at high speed, driven by pressurised jets of water. Well, I don't want to hike too much further because I think that's either the Harris Mountains or Mount Vanguard, and it means on the other side of that is the Shotover. But I see down there's a dock sign, one pointing left to the left gully and one to the right gully, so something must be about to happen. Well, the answer is it's the United Goldfield battery is up there 15 minutes, and beyond it the All Nations battery is 20 minutes. So I'm going to leave those and see about them on the way back, because on the other side of the sign it says that the homeward bound battery is only 10 minutes. Up that way, and oh, beautiful, look at those mountains. Yeah, Skippers and the Shotover are just over there. Ah, look at that, a little stamper. Well, the shed's gone, but the stamps are still here. These things are interesting. Two of these stamps are propped up, and on the lower end here they've got sort of half shoes on a cross rod, and it's obviously that they could hold stamps up if they wanted to. They could just pop these in there and those two stamps would stop working. There's a third one on that set over there, and likewise there's three more on the other head set. Now the ore must have come in from above into this scoopy thing, but what's interesting is this rod that sticks out. It's got padded washers on the end, and beside it on that shaft is a collar. It's the only shaft that has a collar, so I think that every time that particular rod dropped, it whacked that shaft, which opened that gate, which let some ore loose into the box. So every time that stamp fell, more ore went into the box, and the same setup is on the other set of heads. This thing will be one of the cableway ore buckets. It would have been suspended on that angled bit of iron, and when it hit a tipper, it would have just rolled forward, and all the ore would have popped out into the main ore hopper up here. So just putting all that into perspective, here's the stamps with the first little hopper. And the first little hopper gets fed from the main hopper. And the main hopper gets fed by ore buckets coming down on the cableway. Well, there's flat iron and corrugated iron here and machinery. I think this was the site of the Pelton wheel. Imagine a longish belt heading over this way to the remnants of that wheel on the left there. So that horizontal shaft driven by that cog or pulley would have driven all the stamps, and out on the end there would have been another wheel, and that would have come around, driven this thing, the bidan. These stamp heads look almost new. There's so much meat on them, almost unused. There's some without stamp heads. There's a good full set there. Now on this stamper shaft I've noticed a ring, so there's a sign of wear that probably ought to have been there. And there's a few rings over here as well. Little signs of wear that must have meant it wasn't set up properly. This bidan has that big metal shoe in it to grind the fine gravel to a real pasty slurry inside the bidan, which would have turned in this bowl. So we've reached the top of the valley and the All Nations battery. And this is a different configuration to what we've seen before, and you sort of look at that big frame on the left and wonder what's going on there. So let's suss it out. Well, firstly, it's between these two stone walls. The bottom of those two posts is these sort of round things, and they've got quite a few places in it for more of those tall posts. So actually I think what we're looking at here is a water wheel. There's a deep pit, and behind me there's an overflow channel disappearing down into the bushes and back into the creek. While following along on that shaft, the next thing we come to is the remnants of another wheel. Big curved piece disappearing into the ground, sticking up into the air. So this must have been the driving wheel going somewhere. But what's interesting is tucked in hard beside it is the stamper battery, and this is unusual, because if we look down here we can count 1, 2, 3, 4 camshafts or cams. So previously we've seen 5-head pairs of 5-head stampers, but this is a 4-head stamper, so definitely a little one. But that's not all. Look over here, further to the right, and there is a large belt wheel. Now, what drove what here? So I think this shaft has fallen from this level, and I'll just have another look and see if there's anything that looks like it's driving there. And if these guys had a bidan, that would drive it, or perhaps up behind the stamper somewhere there's another wheel that might have been a reducing thing from the big wheel on the left to the smaller wheel here on the right. Okay, can't see any extraxles up the back. There's a bit of heavy scrub, could be anything in there, but it's a small water wheel driven 4-head stamper, the All Nations battery, the top of this creek.